Hello everyone, and today I'd like to continue talking about adversity. I think adversity is a very interesting concept, so I'd like to do another video on this idea. And so Dac McAdams actually divided personality into three things. One is basic needs. The second one, and the basic needs are based on like five different levels of personality. This is like the basic category. It's like neuroticism, extroversion, and so that's like the first portion of your personality, right? The second one is the characteristic adaptations. And this is influenced by the environment and the context. So this includes a bunch of things. This includes your environment, your social support, whether or not the type of coping mechanisms you use or defense mechanisms that you use, etc., etc. Religion, helping other people. So this is like your characteristic adaptation. So this is what influenced by the environment and the context that you're in. It also includes your life goals, your values, etc. So this is like the higher up level. So you have the basic needs, and then you have the characteristic adaptations as well. And so for coping, for example, optimists tend to better cope with situations. So that affects your personality because optimists tend to better cope with situations, and they usually cope using active coping and reappraisal, which we'll talk about the different coping mechanisms. Because pessimists are more likely to use avoidance and try to distract themselves, resorting to drugs and alcohol, and they think that life is unfair, and they think the worst is going to happen, and have less confidence in their ability, so they don't do anything but just complain. Other people, like they blame others. You get the idea. So pessimists tend to think that the worst is going to happen, while optimists are confident in their abilities, and they're more likely to deal with the situation and solve the issue at hand, and then think of the trauma as something that happened to them, and that they can learn something from it. So they look at the benefits. They try to pick out the benefits from a crisis. And then the last one is your life story. And this is your interpretation of what's happening to you. So as Buddha said before, life is what it is what it deems, is not what it deemed to be, it's your interpretation of it. So that's very important. You make your story. It's what you tell yourself. But not only that, it's also what other people think of you. That can also affect your life story. Depending on the thoughts that others have about you, that's going to affect the story that you construct about your life. Okay? And again, optimists are more likely to have a growth mindset. They're more likely to change their character for the better after a traumatic event. So again, the three coping mechanisms are active coping, and this is related to Sternberg's shaping, where you change the environment, aka you do something to fix the issue. And optimists are more likely to do just that. They're more likely to engage in this coping mechanism, in the active coping. The second one is reappraisal, and this is related to Sternberg's adaptation phase, where you change yourself to fit the environment. So this is the reappraisal. So again, optimists are more likely to engage in this one as well. This is where you look at the benefits. So because optimists have a positive mindset, positive outlook on life, they're more likely to find the benefits even after a difficult situation. And they look at the benefits, they change their character for the better, right? They alter their life story where they write about the lessons that they learned, so they have this growth mindset. And then they also better understand others. So, right, anytime that you have a traumatic event, this reappraisal means you're trying to still get the benefits from something. Think of that traumatic event in a way that can shape your character in a positive way, right? Have better relationships with other people, be more compassionate to others, be more tolerant, be more understanding of another person's point of view, etc. So that's what the reappraisal phase is. It's a good coping mechanism. So the first two, optimists are more likely to do. The last one is avoidant, and that's, as I mentioned, pessimists do this avoidant, this coping mechanism, and they think that the worst will happen to them and have to resort to other distractions to not think about the traumatic event anymore. And so success and competitions does not give lasting success. Actually, it's inconspicuous consumption. So this is not materialistic, that would be conspicuous, but inconspicuous is when you're not attached to anything. things like friends, family, religion, and helping others gives much more happiness than conspicuous things like working to get money, for example, right? Like competition to get more money or materialistic possessions, right? It's friends and family, social support, the religion, the helping other people that's more likely to give you happiness. And Robert Emmons talked about that. And then Ked Shelton and Tim Kasser talked about the concepts of coherence, and this is really important. This concept of coherence means you want your short-term and your long-term goals to align together. And this is very important because if you have a long-term goal based on a certain value, you want your immediate goals to align with that longer-term goal. And then another important concept is Pennebaker. He actually did an experiment whereby he got people to talk about their trauma, and he said how disclosing it is beneficial for your health. So, and also allows you to, and also he showed that if you can draw constructive lessons from it, it's good for your health as well. So he showed that people who gained new insights, where he got them to literally write down, got to think about their most traumatic event in their life and to write it down over 4 days. And those that were able to gain insight more and more progressively over 4 days actually got less sick like 6 months later. It's crazy. So these benefits of actually gaining insights from a traumatic event are actually good for your health, it turns out, as well, for your physical health, like not getting sick. And so people who wrote down the traumatic event on paper got less sick than the control groups who thought about something else but not about a traumatic event and didn't get those insights, right? Like the experimental group. Okay? And again, the benefits were only seen in terms of health for people who wrote about the most traumatic event that happened to them in their life and were able to progressively gain more and more insight. Those that didn't experience the benefits in health are either those that wrote something else not related to a traumatic event, or those that just simply acted it out, like for example those that danced it out, or those that try to disclose it in another way. No, you actually have to write it down in words. Actions didn't seem to give the benefits. And also those who didn't get the benefit either are those who wrote it down, but those who already had the insights even beforehand. And so they didn't have any new insights. They still put their insight, but not progressively because they already had. Those that got the benefits are those that over the 4 days came fresh without insights and progressively wrote more and more insights. So having those insights from these traumatic events, these finding meaning in suffering, is what gave the experimental group the health benefits. Okay? And then another concept is called procedural or tact knowledge versus explicit knowledge, which is about facts. Tact knowledge is how you deal with life things, situations. And this may change after suffering. It's the how that can change. How you deal with things that can change after people suffer. They may change their values. They may act differently towards other people, be more compassionate, etc. It's how they deal with things that changes. They're going to be more resilient in future sufferings. If they have a traumatic event in the future, they're going to be more resilient. That's the how that's going to change. That's procedural knowledge to know how to better deal with difficult life situations. So again, getting this insight and finding meaning in suffering is good for your physical health, and it allows you to better deal with and learn how to better deal, procedural knowledge, with future difficult situations and events. And people who are optimistic tend to do better. But even if you're not optimistic, you can still get benefits from getting proper social support, religion, and helping others, which has been shown to be beneficial for happiness and well-being. And so being optimistic is definitely helpful to better cope with things. But having a social support, religion, and helping other people and finding meaning in the suffering, of course, also helps you in terms of better dealing with difficult situations and adversity. So what you can put to practice are the following. You can change your cognitive style using techniques discussed earlier, like meditation, the Eastern approach, or the CBT, the Western approach, or Prozac, which can help people find the meaning, even if they're pessimistic. So remember, I said optimism and pessimism is largely genetic, based on depending on which frontal lobe is active. I believe if the right side is overactive, then you tend towards the pessimistic side, versus the left overactivation is more optimistic. So that's difficult to change, but having a social support, but changing your cognitive style and controlling your mind via meditation or CBT, and challenging those negative automatic thoughts via CBT, right, is very important. Okay, so having a peace of mind, being able to control your mind and eliminating negative thoughts is very important, because if you ruminate a lot, that clearly does not help when it comes to finding meaning. For example, if you're pessimistic, it doesn't help because you ruminate a lot. So this helps decrease the ruminations. You have to change your cognitive style. The second one is social support. Social support helps us fight threat better, because you have people who can help you, who can give you suggestions on how to better deal with situations, the meaning that you can extract from a certain adversity. The third one is religious community, similar to social support, allows you to disclose your inner turmoil to them, and faith helps find meaning via stories from religious leaders, right? Via stories about crises and losses. So it allows you to better find meaning that way as well. And again, you can share your difficulties with this supportive religious community. And then the last one is to write it down. So why it happened, and see benefits from it, just like Pennebaker's experiment did. And so by writing it down, study shows it's good for your health as well, as you guys saw earlier. But writing it down is definitely beneficial to see benefits from it and find meaning in the suffering. So, and this actually is especially useful for a young age, as Haid writes in the book, in your 20s especially, because if you find meaning early in life from suffering early on, like in your 20s, and the benefits from it, you're actually going to become more resilient later in life than if you're only able to find meaning from a certain from a certain traumatic event after your 30s. So doing it early is definitely beneficial to be more resilient and have better control over difficult situations later in life. So these are some things that you can put to practice right now. Changing your cognitive style via meditation or CBT, having a good social support with whom you can discuss your difficult traumatic situations and hardships, having a religious community, again, with whom you can disclose these events, these losses, etc., and writing it down, trying to find meaning from these difficult traumatic situations.